Well, the clock officially struck midnight on the Patriots' 2025 Cinderella story of a season in Super Bowl 60 as they officially drop to the Seattle Seahawks by a score of 29-13 in what started off as a defensive battle that later had some fireworks in the second half of this game, but the Patriots just unable to overcome a lot of their offensive deficiencies and mount a second half comeback. In this one, Seattle led wire to wire in their victory and claimed their second Super Bowl title, joining the 2013 Seattle Seahawks teams as Super Bowl champions. It was a wild ride for the Patriots here this year, an unexpected Super Bowl berth to say the least, but unfortunately they just were unable to finish the job in the game here Sunday evening. Alongside Tyler Geis, I'm Eddie Murata, and everybody, welcome on into an instant reaction edition of the Patriots Roundtable Podcast, where we're going to be breaking down what exactly went wrong here for New England in Super Bowl 60. But Tyler, I have to start things off here by just kind of gauging how you're feeling after that loss.
I'm still in my Patriot Tom Brady jersey, my faithful visiting team Tom Brady Patriots jersey that I got. I've had this since high school, but it's kind of my lucky one I wear. But it's weird because I kind of went into this trying to maybe want to play it safe, like, oh, I'm not going to be too bummed if they lose. I'm going to be excited if they win, but something kind of just, I don't know. I don't feel too depressed in the sense. It's been a good run. This is a team that has only lost 4 games since September. An incredible thing to watch. I mean, we'll touch on everything, what to look ahead on next season for them or in the off season. But I'm just happy it wasn't 12-0. There was a point in this game where I was like, are they really going to lose by 4 field goals and that's it? Because that was kind of the first half narrative. It's like the Patriots defense was really ramping things up, and they, that bled into the second half as well. But then it kind of turned into a good offensive surge for the Seahawks. Plus the Patriots getting in there as well, putting up some points. But I'm bummed to see them lose. But I'm also happy with what this team did this year. I think most people will agree with me who cover the Patriots or just fans in general. And I just, it's a weird feeling. It's a very mixed feeling right now. After that game, they had a few moments where I thought, ooh, is this going to turn into a pretty interesting final 5.5 minutes in the fourth quarter? The Mac Hollins touchdown got me back in things a little bit because being down 19-0 wasn't looking too hot. But it's tough. It's tough. But this is a young team, and I think that's why I feel the way I do, after all is said and done for Seattle. Congrats to the Seahawks as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a great performance for Seattle, especially as the game wore along. I thought especially in that first quarter, this game was shaping up to be one of these Patriots identity performances that we've seen all throughout the postseason. Seattle in that first quarter of play, we knew that they were going to try and establish the run with Kenneth Walker early and often in this one. And by the end of that first quarter, they were averaging just 1.8 yards per carry. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, the Patriots are down on the scoreboard, but they're keeping Seattle out of the end zone. When they got down into the red zone, they weren't converting any touchdowns. And in games like this, the old adage is always that you need to be scoring touchdowns, not field goals. And even though Seattle was up on the scoreboard and that lead kept expanding, it was only little by little where it felt like the Patriots were just 1 or 2 big plays away from really starting to turn the dynamic of that game back in their favor, but it just never really happened. Maybe later in that game, you had a moment or two but they were down 19-0 at that point already. And it was really that big second quarter by Walker in the Seattle offense that really started to open things up for them. And they were able to continue exploiting those gaps in the Patriots defense in the second half. All of that led to Kenneth Walker averaging a great number on the ground. He had 29 total touches in this game for 161 total yards. And he started really gashing New England more and more later on as this game wore along. The Patriots, I thought, especially early, did a good job of trying to hold the ball and keep Seattle's offense off the field when they did have possession. But especially as you got into that second and third quarter, they had a string of 6 of 7 possessions where they didn't even gain a first down. It was 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out, almost until the beginning of the fourth quarter there. And when they actually did finally start moving the ball, that's when Drake Maye had that first of 3 turnovers on the strip sack there to end the third quarter and really set Seattle up in a position to put this one a little bit more out of reach. They scored that A.J. Barner touchdown, the first touchdown of the game, to start off the fourth quarter shortly thereafter, and really were able to kind of seal the victory there. Of course, you mentioned that Maye touchdown pass to Mac Hollins, and then the Patriots get that 3 and out right there afterwards. And you're thinking, okay, barely any time was taken off the clock. They're throwing deep shots down the field. Maybe there's a chance there, but when all said and done, they got back to that running game late again with Walker, and he was really able to help them put this one away. He was named Super Bowl MVP for his efforts in the game. Tyler, what did you see from that Seattle rushing offense here today that really helped put them over the top?
Well, you saw them testing Walker throughout the first half, and he broke a few, I think, 20+ yard runs in the second quarter where it looked like, oh no, Seattle's going to start to run away with this with, I think 2 different possessions, or maybe they were on the same possession where they're like, this is going to lead to 6. Next thing you know, we're going to be down 20-0 at half. If you could kind of tell he was really kind of the standout factor of that offense because, JSN versus Christian Gonzalez was an interesting matchup like you and me kind of predicted last week. And it was I'd say Gonzo got the best of him. I know JSN went in the concussion protocol tent, went to the locker room, came back in late, maybe didn't have that much of a factor in this game. So the Seahawks did have to rely on the run, and luckily they got a good runner. I think I actually just did a little research on him on some other things I'm doing for the Super Bowl this week. He got to like 20 miles an hour on a 74-yard run back in 2022. I did not even know that. I knew he was fast, but damn. But he was definitely the standout factor. And you kind of saw the Seahawks go away from him a little bit in the third quarter. The Pats were kind of shutting the run down a little bit. He'd get a few runs on them, and the Pats would kind of lock in, and you'd only see about 1 or 2 yard gains. But in the fourth quarter, you saw them rely on him again. He had that big breakaway touchdown that got called back for a holding call or something on Seattle late, and I'm kind of happy it got called back, even though it was a great play, because I didn't want to see them lose that bad, especially late in the game. In that situation. But if I were to look at any besides maybe Sam Darnold and his redemptive arc going into this game, Walker's performance is the standout of this offensively, especially.
Yeah, you mentioned Sam Darnold, so I'm going to kind of turn over there to him. He did enough to win this game. It wasn't always pretty for him. I think he got stronger as the game went along. It felt like, especially in that first half, while New England wasn't getting home with sacks, they only finished with 1 in the game, and that came from Milton Williams in the third quarter. They felt like they were constantly living in the Seattle backfield through the majority of the first half of that game, and he was just able to kind of evade things, but overall, he wasn't necessarily doing anything with those plays. He was off on a lot of his throws in the first half. He finished the opening period there just 9 of 22 for 88 yards. But again, as the game started to reach its latter stages, Darnold began converting on those critical moments that we always talked about with the Patriots through this postseason run. It wasn't always pretty, but in the moments when he needed to be great, he was great. That was Sam Darnold. here tonight. So again, on the stat sheet, not all that pretty at the end of the game, 19 of 38. That's a 50% completion percentage. So that's not going to wow anybody. 202 yards and 1 touchdown, but all in all, he took care of the football. There were a couple of opportunities for the Patriots there, and especially on Jackson Smith-Njigba, they really were able to take him out of the game. He only recorded 4 receptions on 10 targets for 27 yards. And if we were to take everything else out of context and coming out of this game, you were to tell me that Jackson Smith-Njigba would be held to that little catches on that many targets and that little yardage, I would think that the Patriots defense was doing something right in this one. And Christian Gonzalez especially had a couple of moments in this one. In the second quarter, he broke up a deep post route to Rashid Shaheed. That would have been a ginormous gain. He basically ran the route for him, Tyler, and came in, undercut it at the last moment. It was a beautiful play, and then capped it off in that second quarter in the waning moments there as Seattle tried to take a 13-0 lead going into half. Smith-Njigba was the target on the goal line on a deep in cut, and Gonzalez once again just broke beautifully on the football, almost recording an interception there for the Patriots that would have definitely kept Seattle off the scoreboard there, but still they were able to hold them to 3. And I think that's one of the things coming out of this game for the Patriots that you can feel extremely encouraged about is against an offense that has this much firepower. They held them to 1 for 4 in the red zone, and the only red zone conversion that the Seahawks had was off of that late third quarter strip sack on Maye that we mentioned a little bit earlier, set Seattle up deep in New England territory, and they were able to punch it in the end zone with that A.J. Barner touchdown pass there. That made the game 22-7 at that point, or 19-0 at that point. And then New England was able to go down and make that a 19-7 game with that big 3-play, 67-yard touchdown drive that took off just under a minute. And that's kind of where I want to flip here for the Patriots. And we're going to talk a lot about what went wrong for New England here tonight. But there were some moments that, even through all of the turmoil that they faced in this game, there was some optimism when they were keeping Seattle out of the end zone. They felt like they were still in striking distance. And if they were able to get in the end zone at any point, they could really flip the switch. And that happened for just a little bit there in that fourth quarter on that 3-play, like tic-tac-toe type of drive there where Maye lost that pass over the middle of the field to Hollins. Beautiful throw over the second level of the defense to set that next play up where he took the shot down the sideline that we've gotten so accustomed to seeing from Drake Maye this year to connect with Mac Hollins on that touchdown pass. They go out there afterwards. They get that 3 and out. And then it was the turnovers yet again for the Patriots and the pressure in the pocket. Maye was sacked 6 times in this game and ultimately ended up tying Joe Burrow for the most sacks taken in a single postseason in NFL history. Burrow set that mark at 20 in 2021 when the Bengals ultimately lost to the Rams in the Super Bowl that year. And Maye has faced that consistent pressure all throughout this playoff run. Tonight was the most that he's been sacked in this postseason with 6 sacks. And it really could have been 7 if they didn't overturn that last one late to be an interception by Uchenna Nwosu when he took that one back to the house that really sealed the game here. Tyler, what'd you see from the Patriots offense in this one, and particularly that offensive line that led to them having so many struggles consistently sustaining offense in this game?
Yeah. A lot of like what you just said, I feel like there was just a lot of missed opportunities, and I'm not talking about missed opportunities of, 25 plus yard passes from Maye to, Pop Douglas, just to throw a name out there or something. I'm talking about just like an 8-yard out towards the sideline, which I think we saw in the opening drive of the second half. They got the ball, they're down 9-0 coming out of the locker room. It's like, okay, new start kind of thing. And they go 3 and out. And I just remember, I think it was a pass to Douglas where it just kind of just went right by him, or just looked very catchable. And you could just kind of tell like Maye was just very uncomfortable, very forceful with his throws, not as tactical as we've seen him be in the postseason. with a young team like this, they're either going to do one of two things, I feel, when they get to a Super Bowl. They're either going to know how to get to the next level, and that's kind of something that also comes out of coaching, or they are going to run out of steam. And, I feel like maybe you and I have felt this, but maybe we didn't want to bring it to the topic of the show, but like this could happen. And, mistakes like this could happen with young players out there. And a case in point for me is Will Campbell. Will Campbell's going to get probably the biggest critique of all, and I'm probably going to get poked fun of a lot on the internet, and I don't want to take part in any of that. He hasn't had a great postseason. He's still a kid. He's a rookie. He's still got to figure out some things this off season. But he did not have a great game tonight. He wasn't there for Maye. He was getting, but he also had his work cut out for him against one of the best, edge rushing teams out there. I just think it's a combination of that. The offensive line was not there for Maye tonight. And again, I just think there was not a lot of opportunity for when they maybe needed to switch to like these 7 or 8 yard passes to just keep the ball moving, keep the clock moving, and just kind of develop some patience. Because I feel like we've seen that a lot out of this season, out of this team all season long. Just kind of the way of they kind of almost build up steam on the field and just kind of start really ramping up things in the second half of a game. And you just didn't have that at all. The Seahawks had an answer for everything for them. I think Chris Collinsworth or Tirico worded it, and it's kind of harsh. They just said, like, this is one of the most worst performances in a Super Bowl ever. And I don't think they said that to slight Drake Maye at all, but statistically it probably was. But offensively, they had nothing going. They had nothing to really get them even short yardage gains. It was a rough watch.
Yeah, it was for a lot of the game, and I don't think the Patriots did Maye any favors with the rushing attack either. I thought that early on where Seattle struggled to run the ball, New England actually found some efficiency in the really early portion of that game. Ramondre Stevenson was running hard, but that really tailed off in the latter stages of the game. He didn't carry the ball pretty much at all in the second half and only finished with 7 carries for 23 yards in the game. Maye actually finished as New England's leading rusher in this one with 5 carries for 37 yards. Not a lot of that creative using him as a designed runner that I was kind of expecting to see coming into this one. But I don't think the game script really allowed for that in this game. And that's really what was unfortunate for them as they were trying to come back in this game. They just weren't able to start to sustain any of that offensive momentum where you could start to pull out some of those wrinkles later on. You need some things to be successful first so that the misdirection that you're pulling on Seattle's defense actually fakes them out in some way, shape, or form. And they just weren't able to get that going at all to help Maye out. It really turned this into a majority drop back passing game for the Patriots. And like you mentioned, that really just allowed that Seattle front four to tee off in the pass rush. I'll just comment on one thing that you brought up with Will Campbell in this game. This was the first time in Super Bowl history that 2 rookies along the left side of an offensive line both started next to each other. And I think Campbell and Jared Wilson both had their struggles in this game. And really throughout this playoff run for the Patriots, as you look back on those sack statistics and all the forced fumbles and lost fumbles that the Patriots have had in this playoff run. But I don't think that that's an indication of what you're going to see from Will Campbell in future years. I think that this is going to be a platform for a lot of people now throughout the course of the offseason to reaffirm a lot of those beliefs that they had about this guy going into the draft last year, that he can't play tackle. And I think it's worth mentioning that even in the week leading up to this game, Campbell himself admitted that he tore his MCL in that game against Cincinnati earlier in the season, fought his way back from that injury, but still not 100% going into a game like this. And especially with the way that affects how he's able to plant against these speed to power rush moves that all the talk has been about his inability to defend against those on the opposing team's pass rush. I think that that's an area where, you know, you need to have two good knees, and he just wasn't there just yet in this playoff run because of the injury concerns that he had there. That provided a lot of opportunity for Seattle, and it really put New England in a disadvantageous position in this one. But again, I don't think that that's necessarily what we're going to see from Campbell in years to come, and I don't think that this postseason run is any reason for them to move off of him as a tackle, try and shift him into guard, anything like that. I think he just needs more reps and to get healthy in the offseason, and that's exactly what they have coming up here. So let's turn the page a little bit more now. The Patriots dropped this Super Bowl game, but Tyler, this still feels like the start of something. This was one of the more unexpected Super Bowl runs in recent NFL history here for New England. What are you looking to see them do come this offseason to try and bolster up that team and make another run at it come next year?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Nobody expected, probably neither even you or I expected to really get to this point. I know you were a little tight-lipped about being around the AFC Championship a couple weeks ago, if we were even going to get that far. And yeah, I was kind of a week-by-week guy as we got into the playoffs too. And then I think it was after that Texans game, I was like, I'm all in. We're all in. We're going, baby. But looking ahead, I hope they keep this squad together and maybe make some additions in terms of adding in another threat in the wide receiver game. You know, I know the big rumor is AJ Brown because of his relationship with Vrabel. I don't know. Time will tell, because you never know if you bring somebody in like that into the kind of system you already got going on. Is that going to make things better? Is that going to make things worse? I love what you said about Will Campbell, because I think he's great. I just, you can kind of see he really is a little bit of a shell of himself since he's been back from that injury. And I don't chalk that. I don't, you know, I chalk it up to rookie mistakes, but I also chalk it up to, like going into a highly competitive environment like the postseason. It's gonna wear and tear on you. You know, I think Chris Collinsworth said it at one point that, you know, this game, when it's really seemed out of reach, this game was going to be a learning experience for the Patriots. And, you know, Mike, there's no vibe among this squad of tensions anywhere, unhappiness with this person or unhappiness with this coach. It really seems like a majority of these guys are on the same page. And I would think they want to stick around. I mean, most of these big names on the team, Stephon Diggs, Milton Williams, they got multi-years there in their contracts. So I would think they kind of nourish what they got and test the waters of free agency. You can go with a wideout. I mean, I think, you know, give Christian Gonzalez whatever the hell he wants in the years to come. If he keeps playing like how he's playing, he's not going to get the label of the best shutdown corner in the game yet, probably. But maybe he should. If the roles were reversed and the Patriots won this game, who knows what we'd be saying about Christian Gonzalez right now? Because I think he probably was the best Patriot on that field tonight. He had an incredible game. JSN was not a factor. You had to switch things up on Cooper Kupp, I believe, and Cooper Kupp ended up having a nice surge in the second half. You know, Darnold had to rely on other receivers. But anyway, back onto what we're talking about here. I think this team they're on the same page, and I think they all know they need to go forward. But they do have a harder schedule. Not to always bring up the schedule again, but you look at that schedule next year. You know, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to kind of be back into a version of what we once know them as. And, you know, the Pats have got to play the Chiefs. You know, I don't know what the Bills are going to really be like, but I think they'll still be the big arch nemesis next season. They got some tough games next year. At least that's what it looks like right now. I think it's going to be a different landscape in the AFC, but I think they have a target on their back because a lot of teams want to beat them now. And, you know, Drake May's got one good year under his belt. So therefore, a lot of people are going to study him this offseason. So I think what they need to do with Maye is they got to pivot him a little bit. They got to add some weapons into his artillery, whatever. and have him evolve as a quarterback, because he's been the star of the show, but you don't want to have him plateau in year 3. It's only going to get more competitive and more hard, but I think there is a great system in place for years to come. They just gotta act on it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that if this playoff run showed us one thing, it was where the deficiencies are in this team that they can bolster moving forward. You played 4 of the league's top 5 defenses back to back to back to back all the way through the Super Bowl. And for guys like Will Campbell in the offensive line, that is not an easy matchup on a week in and week out basis. It shows the Patriots where exactly they were weakest and where they need to target for improvement. And heading into the 2026 offseason, they're estimated to have around $42 million in cap space before they do any maneuvering around. That's top 10 in the league. They have 11 draft picks this year. So they have plenty of cap space and assets to go out and really shore up on a lot of those positions that they deem to be weaknesses on this team. I love the point that you made there, though, not to continue to go back to the schedule here, but I think that what we can see next year from this team, and what we're going to cover a lot in the weeks to come, is that this team could be a lot better next year, but the record may not necessarily reflect that, right? With they're playing the AFC West and the NFC North next year. So a lot better teams on the schedule, even for those out of conference, out of division games. So where you could see this team actually improve talent-wise and maybe even look to make another one of those deep postseason runs. The regular season record may not be at 14-3 like it was this year. Still, the Patriots turnaround from 4-13 all the way to 14-3 was the single greatest turnaround in terms of wins in a single offseason in NFL history. That's absolutely huge for this team moving forward and what it does for their confidence as they enter this offseason. This loss is certainly going to sting for a little bit here, but I think there's a lot to be optimistic about for this New England Patriots team as we enter a pivotal offseason now for them to continue building on such a solid foundation. Tyler, any closing thoughts from you before we start to wrap this one up here?
I'm really proud of this team. The turnaround from what we were a year ago, and a year ago we were just hoping to have a successful season this season, and we got to the grandest stage in the NFL. It was one of those, like I said, at the top of the show here, being such a young team to be at this point, it's almost like I was at peace with if they lost this game, because I was just so happy. It would have been incredibly awesome to see this team, a 7th franchise title, 12 appearances. I actually just also read that they've also lost 6 Super Bowls, which I think is the most of any team in the NFL, which is just crazy. That's the entirety of my life pretty much. I watched the Bledsoe and Parcells loss to the Packers back in the 90s, and I saw all the Brady losses, and now I've seen this one. So and then there's the one to the Bears back in 85, but I wasn't around for that. But I've kind of seen the legacy of this franchise grow. So just if we got to see Drake Maye hoist the Lombardi Trophy and win Super Bowl MVP and stick it to the NFL voters for not giving him league MVP and sticking it to everybody else for not having Kraft and Belichick in the Hall of Fame, that would have been awesome, but it didn't happen. But I'm just still so happy, you and I got to cover this team, and we still get to in the offseason. There's a great environment. There's a great vibe still. And, it's one of those losses you take where you kind of look back and go like, we'll probably be back here at some point. And I'm confident this team, they can keep all the variables in place that they could be in the future.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel's only 50. Drake Maye was the 2nd youngest quarterback to start in a Super Bowl at 23 years old. Josh McDaniels, after a couple of head coaching stints, seems like he could be around for a little while too as the offensive coordinator. That's a big piece. So certainly just the beginning and the foundational pieces here of what's to come for the Patriots moving forward. And, we were just looking for some progress off of 8-26 the last 2 years combined. I'd say we got a whole heck of a lot more than that with the 2025 season. It certainly was quite the historic turnaround for the New England Patriots. Unfortunately, they don't end on the right side of history in Super Bowl 60. Guys, that's going to do it for us here today on the Patriots Roundtable Podcast. If this is your first time joining us, thanks for listening in. And if you're a Patriots fan, sorry that this one isn't of a happier tone after the Super Bowl game, but still a lot to hang your hat on with them making it to this point in the season. A lot of other teams would kill to be where the Patriots are now so soon after turning things around. For Tyler Geis, I'm Eddie Murata, and for all of us at Patriots Roundtable, we'd like to thank you for being here with us. We're signing off. Until next time.